Welcome learners to BEDS 002 Week 5 Part 1. Today we will be discussing socialization. This particular week is divided into 3 parts. The first part is forms and values desired for socialization. The process of socialization is the social development of the individual. It simply refers to acquire the socially approved ways of behavior, approve social roles, and developing social attitude. Many of us believe that the way we behave is perhaps due to our genes, while few others believe that the way we behave is due to how we are brought up. So when we talk about socialization is the process of learning to become a member of the society. It includes formal and informal education, and socialization is done by parents, teachers, peers, neighbors, and educational and religious institutions. So when we talk about socialization includes the process of learning which is carried by or which is given to us by formal institutions like the educational institution, the religious institution, and the informal education. Socialization through informal education given to us by our parents, our peer group, neighbors, and so on and so forth. Let me give you an example, not exactly example, but it is a fact that we members of the society or people living in the society are social beings. So we need socialization to learn the habits or the ways of behavior which is socially approved by the society. If we do not learn the ways of behavior, or if we do not learn how to behave, then we would not be able to acquire the socially approved behavior, which means that we will be deviant, we will be outcast, and we will not be accepted by the society. So when we talk about socialization is a very important process of learning by which each individual become a member of the society, where we learn the approved norms and attitudes, how to live within the norms of the society. So socialization is the process of learning. And when we talk about the process of socialization begins from the birth of the child and ends with the death of the person. So during a person's lifespan, from the time a person is born to till he or she dies, the process of socialization continues, and it begins from the time a person is born. During the lifespan of the individual learn values, beliefs, and norms of the society. Some of the values, beliefs, and norms that are learned for becoming a member of the society are appreciated, while some are not appreciated, rather to some extent criticized. So when we talk about the process of socialization begins from the birth of a child, of an individual. It continues during the lifespan of the individual and ends with the death of the person. And during this lifespan of a person, there are various values, beliefs, and norms which are learned by the individual. And at times, there are some norms and values which are appreciated and some which are not appreciated, rather to some extent which can be criticized. Let us assume, for example, all individuals or all members of the society are taught good behavior, but how much do we retain that behavior? Families, parents would teach us good behavior when we are young, during the time we are there at home before we go to school. Like you may have heard the saying that the family is the first school of learning. So the family teach a lot of good values, they teach us a lot of good behavior, but how much do we retain that behavior? It happens that if you are socialized properly from the time you are born into a family, how the family socializes you, how the school, your peer group, the neighbor, how the socialization takes place, and so on and so forth. A lot of behavior depends on how much good behavior we are taught, we are able to retain those behavior. Perhaps it also happens because socialization is an unwritten code of conduct of moral behavior. There are no written rules of bringing up a child. A child learns by imitation. A good person can become a bad person and vice versa. So when we talk about socialization, family is the first school of learning. They teach you good values, they teach you good behavior. However, the way you are socialized after, when you go to school rather, and then when you have friends, your peer group, your neighbors, your community, then you go to college, you go to offices, your surroundings, how much of that behavior is retained depends a lot on you as well, because there is no written code of conduct of moral behavior. A lot of times a person learns by imitation. Let's say in a family, the child sees his father and mother behaving very nicely to each other, speaking politely, and they see that the parents, the father and the mother, respect each other, they help each other out. So the child grows up to become a respectful person. The child will be imitating the role of the father or the mother, depending on whether the child is a girl or a boy. If it is a boy, the child will imitate the role of his father as a respectful man, respecting his wife, and so on and so forth. However, if the child sees that the parents are not respectful, they shout at each other, they are not polite, then in most cases, the child would imitate this behavior in future, and the child will grow up to be not a respectful person. So there is no given rule that, a child would imitate the good behavior of the person that he is seeing. But in majority of the cases, if a child sees a good behavior, then in most cases, the child will imitate that good behavior, because especially when a child is young, a lot of impression, a lot of memories are made of these behavior that he sees in front of him or her. So a lot of behavior, what he sees in front of him, makes him or her to be a responsible person. Socialization is very important when it comes to how a child behaves in future. The process of socialization takes place in cycles, with mountains and plateaus representing the socialization which takes place. Mountain signifies rapid movement in social behavior, and plateaus means no improvement or regression to social behavior. There are 5 main types of socialization. These are primary, secondary, developmental, anticipatory socialization, re-socialization. Let me repeat. There are mainly 5 types of socialization: primary, secondary, developmental, anticipatory socialization, and re-socialization. Let us discuss them one by one. What is primary socialization? Primary socialization is the stage which begins with the birth of a child and ends at the scene of the formation of a mature personality. At this stage, the child learns the fundamental laws of life, adapts to the basics of social communication, studies it, and during this time that parents, friends, teacher, peers and acquaintances take an active part in shaping the personality. Family turns out to be an essential part of this level. After all, a person begins to learn the basics of life in a family. Here, for the first time, a person learns something new and first of all learn to speak. So, if the family teaches the child good values in terms of how to be polite, how to speak respectfully to the elders, how to address each other politely and respectfully, then the child would be able to inculcate these values, and this would make the child grow up into a responsible person in the future, a person who has acquired socially proved behavior. So family is very important, and it is one of the most important part in a child's life when we talk about primary socialization, wherein family plays a very significant role. In primary socialization, after the family, wherein we say that the family is the first school of learning, where the family teaches the child primary socialization, the role of teachers are also very important, because when the child starts going to school, the formative years is spent in a formal educational institution. How the teachers behave, how the educational institutions uphold values which are good values in the society, like honesty, punctuality, cleanliness. All these are very important aspects of primary socialization, which is acquired by the child in educational institutions. And also the child imitates the teachers in a lot of way, because the teacher stays with the child during his or her formative years. So the role of the teacher is very important, and as well as the friends, the peer group. During primary socialization, the role of the peer is also very important, because children are easily influenced by their friends and their peer group. So it is very important that you choose your friends, you choose your peer group very carefully. If you have peer group who makes you want to be a better person, who inculcate good values in you, then it is very good for you and it helps you grow up into a good, responsible citizen. However, if your friends, if your peer group are a group of people, a group of individuals who have bad habits, have bad manners, then you would be easily influenced by the bad habits, and you grow up to be a person who would reflect certain deviant behavior. So the role of parents, the role of teachers, the role of peer group, the role of educational institution is very important in primary socialization. Then what do we mean by secondary socialization? Secondary socialization is the stage which comes after primary socialization. This stage consists of the development of an already matured personality. This stage is associated with the study and work of the person. Person begin to classify, or in other words, people begin to classify themselves as a small group of people who belong to a large society. A person starts to represent the values and behavior of their group. The individual is no longer alone, but has found people who are close to them in behavior or in style of communication. Individual, educational, official, and formal institution takes an active part in secondary socialization. They lay the ideological basis for human behavior and prevail in the second half of human life. Let me give you an example. I am a teacher working in Indira Gandhi National Open University, and I would be having a group of friends, a group of colleagues, because I belong to a certain department and I have a group of colleagues. We are bound by a certain rules of conduct because we belong to the same department, and there are certain ideology or there are certain behavior which I identify with my particular department. For example, my discipline is development studies. Then I would, during discussion or during meetings, we will be discussing about the various issues concerning development studies, or we would be talking about how to go about launching a new course, a new program, and so on and so forth with regard to the discipline that I am in. So when we talk about secondary socialization, it is talking about the individual educational, official, and formal institution that takes an active part in secondary socialization. This socialization takes place when an individual is matured and the individual, the person starts forming a group wherein he or she identifies with this particular group, maybe on the basis of the ideology, maybe on the basis of certain rules of conduct, and so on and so forth. So this is called secondary socialization. Then what is developmental socialization? At this stage, a person develops his or her social skills. The individual is focused on reaching maximum heights in the social development. A person applies the skills in society through trial and error and develops the level of socialization. During developmental socialization, a person can determine which skills they will need, which ones must be eliminated, and which ones will be developed for a long time. For example, during the stage of socialization, which is developmental socialization, a person or a member of the society would try to become a good public speaker. So there would be various ways by which he would try to become a good public speaker. Maybe he would be attending some workshops on how to become a good public speaker. He would be watching certain videos on how to become a good public speaker. So this stage talks about how a person would try to develop his or her social skills, and the person focuses on reaching the maximum heights in social development, and the person would apply his or her skills in society to develop his level of social skills, so that at this particular stage he becomes a person who has reached his maximum heights in social skills and social development. Then we have anticipatory socialization. Now the individual has figured out the skills they have learned and began to apply them in society. People actively use the skills that they have developed, and most of which has become a habit. At this stage, a definite style of communication of a person is formed by the people from the nearest surroundings. So, after the development socialization, when the individual hones his skill, tries his best to develop his social skills, then in anticipatory socialization, the individual applies those skills which he has developed, and he begins to communicate through the way in which the skills he has developed in the stage of developmental socialization. So in this stage, a definite style of communication is formed by the person, and the communication skills or the socialization skill which he or she has developed becomes a habit, and he begins to apply them in the society in terms of how to communicate with others, how to communicate with people in the society, in the neighborhood, how to communicate with people with whom he is working, and so on and so forth. Now an individual understands how to build a relationship with society in the future. So when we talk about anticipatory socialization, I'll give you an example. In anticipatory socialization, the example I'm going to give you is how law school students learn how to behave like lawyers. So they would be entering a law school. They would try to learn what are the rules of conduct that law students have to follow and how to behave like lawyers, what are the various laws which they can use, and so on and so forth. So in anticipatory socialization, there are various skills that members of the society learn so that they can apply those skills in the surrounding. For example, I gave you how law school students learn how to behave like lawyers. So this is an example of anticipatory socialization. Then what is resocialization? Resocialization is the stage which is considered to be the final in the sociological process that we are discussing. That is, in the socialization process that we are discussing, resocialization is the final stage. During this period, people reject the habits that they have developed over the years. A person refuses their usual style of communication and building relationship with people. Now they are building a new model of behavior in which they will rely. And then everything repeats in a cycle. Resocialization is a process in which a person is taught new norms, values, and practices that foster their transition from one social role to another. Example of involuntary resocialization are when women become widows, or when people go to prison, because when they are in this state, that is, if a woman who has lost her husband, there would be certain rules of conduct which she has to dress, certain rituals that she has to observe, or when a person goes to prison because of some wrong deeds that he has done, there would be certain rules that he has to follow as a prisoner. So resocialization is a process in which a person is taught new norms, values, and practices that foster, that helps in the transition from one social role to another. So we have discussed the 5 main types of socialization, which were primary, secondary, then developmental, then we have talked about anticipatory socialization, and then we have talked about resocialization. Now let us talk about what are the values desired for socialization. There are certain values which are desired for socialization, and when we talk about these values which are desired for socialization, we are talking about the values, the positive values or traits which are desirable for socialization, and briefly mention some of them. These are accepting authority. For example, if you are in a school, you accept the authority of the teacher, of the principal, then you are loyal, devoted, accept what's given to you. You are affectionate, you are aspiring, you are ambitious, motivated, caring, considerate, thoughtful, cooperative, courageous, courteous, decisive, devoted. Thus, what is necessary? You persevere, you endure, you are enthusiastic, you have faith in yourself, you have faith in others, you are flexible, you are forgiving, selfless, you are self-disciplined, and so many other positive traits which are desirable. These are very briefly some of them I have mentioned. Then talking about certain undesirable traits which are not desirable, which are not liked, which are not socially approved by the society. And when one feels reluctant to do certain things that are necessary, when we show hostility towards certain individual, then such type of attitude is called negative or undesirable. When there are certain things which you have to do, when there are certain socially approved behavior that the society expects from you but you do not do them, then this type of attitude is called negative or desirable. I will briefly mention some of the undesirable negative traits and values. These are ignoring people, rejecting what's given to you, you are distant, you are cold, you are aloof, you are uncaring, you are callous, you reject change, you are cheerless, you are gloomy, you are sore, grumpy, inconsiderate, thoughtless, indecisive, you have lack of faith in yourself and others, you can't be relied on, you are inflexible, you are stubborn, unforgiving, resentful, spiteful, you are, uncommitted, you are uncaring, unhelpful, hostile. These are very briefly some of the undesirable negative traits. Undesirable negative traits or values which individuals should not cultivate. So in today's class, dear learners, I have talked about the 5 types of socialization, and I have discussed what are the desirable and undesirable negative traits and values. With this particular lecture, I complete part 1 of week 5 of your course BEDS 002. Thank you so much.